Hi everybody, welcome to Bugbears and Brews. My name's Brian, and today we're going to go ahead and talk about a topic that I struggle with from time to time, is whether or not to use Theater of the Mind or maps and miniatures when it comes down to combat. Personally, as a DM for myself, I was beginning in my DM career is I was always maps and minis, maps and minis. It's a little bit easier for new DMs to get a hold of, I think. And then as I got more confident with my DM skills, I slowly started to branch out into the Theater of the Mind for combat. I still like both of them, and I find there's some places where I definitely prefer Theater of the Mind over maps and minis, and there's some where I know going into this, I say, I'm going to have maps and minis for this. Let's do it up. So for those that aren't familiar with Theater of the Mind, it is the old school concept of D&D where there's just the DMs, the players, the dice, and the papers, and you are describing what's going on. You describe a room and the layout, who's where. So it's very descriptive and it lies heavily on the DM. But some of the things I like about it with combat is, first off, it's quick. You can easily say, for unexpected combat, somebody says, you know what, I go ahead and I break out my broadsword. I'm going to go ahead and take a crack at this guy. From there, you can just jump right into combat. You don't have to clear off the table, have people move papers so you can bust out a map, get out the minis and all that kind of stuff. The other thing is I find that the players tend to ask a bit more questions about the surrounding room. They'll say, hey, is there a table nearby I can flip under or flip over? Or is there a chair I can swing and crack at this guy's head? Can I hide behind something? Those kinds of things there. So I don't want to say it encourages role play, but it kind of helps players feel a little bit more free form with things there. Also, that leads into the flexibility, because just because I didn't think about something there, a player can easily say, I want to do this, what's around there. So with that, it kind of makes me, I might have had this initial scenario planned out, like, hey, there's a couple rocks nearby, but then somebody's like, oh, is there a big branch? I want to try to trip up this horse with a big branch or something like that. Sure, why not? Let's go for it. That's that whole, DM should always say yes type mentality there. Lastly, one of the things I really like about it, it's free. That's one of the things why I think it's kind of interesting that new DMs tend to lean more towards the minis and maps type deal. I understand it's a little bit easier to DM for, but when you're going down to it, and you're just looking at what do I need to start with D&D, Theater of the Mind is free. That's awesome. Some of the drawbacks I see with it, AoE spells, dealing with AoE anything and positioning, that kind of stuff, it's a pain in the ass. There's no way better to say it. Theater of the Mind can be a pain in the ass when it comes down to real precise combat. So anything that you're dealing with a lot of precise stuff, or lots of players and lots of opponents, I wouldn't mess with it. My cutoff is normally if I'm dealing with like 3 or 4 opponents plus my player base is, I'm not going to mess with it. For me as a DM, keep it all in my head. That's a lot to take care of, to track 10 plus people there, or 10 plus people on an imaginary board in my head. Also, there's no visual appeal. Sorry about that. Let's not lie. Minis are sexy, right? This guy, sexy? Yeah, skeleton. This is one of my recent paints. And it's not zooming in on it or focusing, but yeah, these things are fun. They're sexy. Not sexy, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. The other thing is it relies a lot on a DM, and if your DM skills aren't up to chops, you can do a lot of disservice to your players. I know there's times where even I'm still trying to get used to Theater of the Mind. I don't describe a room fully, and somebody says, oh, well, if I would have known that ahead of time, I would have gone behind there instead. Well, I'm sorry. It's a lot of DM heaviness on it, and that's a big hurdle that I'm trying to get over myself. So that's one of the big drawbacks of it. But the thing is since it is so DM heavy, it does kind of help you become a better DM, I think. Going over to the maps and mini side, one of the things I really like about it is its combat is precise. You can break down everything and say, hey, here's this guy's 25 feet away exactly. I can do that and use my AoE spell, hit 3 other guys. The other thing is, like I said, these guys rock, and it's a nice visual feast. You sit down a battle map for the day and you just look at it, and everybody breaks out their phones and takes little pictures and whatnot. I think it's fun to have. And I also mentioned this kind of a little bit earlier. DMs love these guys. Players love these guys. Players love finding that right mini to incorporate. So I'm just looking down at the mini here to be their avatar on the game board. Especially since Hero Forge came out. One of the guys at the table here, he has one Hero Forge mini, and I think he has a second one coming. They're awesome. And so having that avatar, especially for the people that aren't that artistic and don't have character portraits or that kind of things, having that little player avatar on the game board is a lot of fun. And then it also, the maps and minis allows for team tactics. So you can easily see that somebody is, that 30 feet away. Oh, I'm going to go run by you. You hide behind that corner, and then you get the attack of opportunity that'll start off combat. That kind of stuff. Not saying that that's not plausible within Theater of the Mind. It's just players tend to do a lot more team tactic stuff with the board and the map and minis. Some of the things I don't like about it, first and foremost, the cost. Even if you go with like the Reaper Bones like I like to use, I mean, you're looking at $1.50, $2 maybe. I have the Bones 3 Kickstarter coming in, so that was like 50 cents or something like that, 70 cents a mini. But even that's a lot, because then I got to buy paints, and I got to put the time into painting them, which is like an hour and a half each. So it's also a time sink, like I said. You got a cost and the time factor there. So with minis, you're either going to be looking for the right minis. The blind boxes are okay if you buy either the Pathfinder booster boxes or the D&D booster boxes. But you don't know what you're getting. So they're fun to buy, but it's a real gamble. And just a side note, out of those two, if you don't ever buy the blind boxes, I think they're both made by WizKids, but I feel the Pathfinder ones are actually a bit better of a product. I don't know why. The paints seem to be not as ugly. That's just my thoughts on it, though. The other thing is I really struggle with this one as a DM. Or I did at the start, and going onto it, or going further in, I overcame that hurdle. Is I can use this skeleton now to represent an orc, represent a goblin, represent whatever the hell I want. But beginning of my DM career, this was a skeleton, this was nothing else. And if I didn't have a wolf, shit. So originally I bought a bunch of washers, 1-inch washers, and I put all these little stickers and whatnot on to represent things, and that was a lot of fun to do, but it was also a lot of time to do. From a player standpoint, one of the things I don't like about maps and minis is if it's not on the map, it's not there. So if I draw out this beautiful battle map and I don't put down a like distinct little puddle of blood there, that puddle of blood never existed. On the other side of that coin, if it is on the map, it's important. That's another mentality that just irks me, especially because I have, from my old days with the D&D encounters, when they used to give out all the cool maps and whatnot before Wizard of the Coast started getting really cheap on us and sending us absolutely nothing, not even free campaign intros and that kind of stuff. They used to give out these battle maps, and so I'll reuse these battle maps for a scenario if I don't want to draw something. I'm like, all right, I know I have this village battle map, let's pull it out. Like the Legend of Baldur's Gate, or Murders in Baldur's Gate map, I use that town square one all the time. And so, but if it's not on that battle map, it doesn't exist to the players. So having the battle map really cuts down on what they try to think of to do, with the environment. Also, if you go and you don't use one of the pre-made maps and instead you draw a battle map ahead of time, first off, that's more time that you're taking up at the table. Or if you do it ahead of time and you come with a prepared map, your players are automatically thinking like, hey, we have combat coming at some point, and it's going to match this section. So as soon as I'm walking into a room that kind of looks like this, the metagame alert goes off, and they're like, oh, I'm going to start preparing my defensives because, hey, here's what's going on. And that leads into my final thing I don't like about the maps and minis is it is metagame fest. I try to remember to remove the minis or the enemies when they go behind a corner. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. But the characters shouldn't know that mini's there. The players or the characters don't, but the players will. And so they'll go, oh, I'm going to sit there and wait for the first thing to come around the corner. Well, then it becomes a standoff of who's going to jerk, the other one off first. Okay, here you go. Here's your free hit. It's one of the big things that bothers me about maps and minis. I know talking about this, it sounds like I'm far more Theater of the Mind guy. I'm not. I like them both pretty equally. I just find that there's a lot of drawbacks with maps and minis. They're a little bit more obvious. I think it's the other thing why I think I see a little bit more of the harshness or the, not harshness, cons with maps and minis is I used it a lot longer than I have Theater of the Mind. So for me, I have a couple different scenarios, which ones I like to use and win. Short combats, unexpected combats, small combats, that kind of stuff. Theater of the Mind is great. Really big landscapes where you're dealing with hundreds of feet. Theater of the Mind is great as well. Key fights, fights with a lot of bad guys, really strategic fights. I go maps and minis, or at least I try to go maps and minis all the time. And then there are some times where I do kind of an in-between where I will do a rough sketch of the environment, and so the players kind of have an idea of what's going on here. And I'll say, all right, players are here, and I'll draw a circle and say you have an enemy here, here, and here. And do it like as a loose battle map type deal. The distances aren't real precise, but the players get a better idea of what's going on there. So like an example with that is exploring a town or something like that. I don't do that one that often. I like it though when I do mess with it. I used it 2 sessions ago when I did the intro fights into when they were going to save the gnome there. They had to deal with some ogres and some orogs, and so I used that method there, and I thought that worked out pretty well. I drew like here's the ridge line, here's where the trees start. There's a couple trees here and there. Here's the cave mouth. Here's the bad guys, roughly 50 feet. You see another group of bad guys about 200 feet off. There you guys go. Have at it. So I would love to hear your guys' opinions about, what are your favorite things with Theater of the Mind? What are your favorite things with maps and minis? Have you never used one or the other? And if so, are you interested in it? Or have you tried when you say, oh, absolutely not, I'm not going back to that? So I'm a big proponent of mixing things up. I love Theater of the Mind. I love the quickness and flexibility of it, but I also love these little guys in my battle map. So I will talk to you guys later. Bye.